beans, wheat, canned meats. These are all good things to have in a well thought out prepper pantry for long-term food storage for those dreaded SHTF events. But having some snacks or comfort foods on hand, like some of these, is also a very good idea. So that when the time comes, you won't have to do this.
It's been so long since we went to the grocery store. Do we have any snacks?
Yeah, I'll get some.
Okay, yay!
All right, here you go. This is all I can find, I'm afraid. Got some beans, some rice, and if you're hungry right now, we got some sardines. Which one do you want? But instead, you can do this. All right, here we go. We got some potato chips, corn chips, and if you want to wait a few minutes, we can make some chocolate chip cookies.
I want some chocolate chip cookies.
All right. Most snack foods and sweets like these are relatively short term when it comes to food storage, but they don't have to be if you repackage them. Hello, my name is Les, and I want to welcome you to the Cheffprepper channel, where in today's video we are going to repackage some snack foods to have in our prepper pantry so that we can have some Apocalyptic chips for those times when you will no longer be able to just go down to the grocery store and get such things. And at the end of the video, we are going to repackage some chocolate chip cookie mix to have along with those Apocalyptic chips. Apocalyptic chips is just a wordplay on the apocalypse, which is a one-time event that has yet to happen. In the world of preparedness, we've come to use the terms the apocalypse, SHTF, and the end of the world as we know it interchangeably. But there are some differences in those three types of events. And for those of you who have an interest in such, we have a video going into the details explaining the difference between SHTF, TEOTWAWKI, and the apocalypse. You might find that really interesting. And before we get started repackaging our Apocalyptic chips, I want to say thank you to Christina V. Thank you, Christina, for buying me a cup of coffee. And thank you to the others who've done so as well. The Apocalyptic chip maker that we're going to be using today is a food saver. This one is a 4400 series, and we also have the attachments for wide mouth mason jars and regular mouth mason jars. And look at that. Saves up to $2,700 per year. That's a pretty good investment. Now, I've never saved $2,700 a year from using this, but if you have something like this, it will allow you to store these kinds of foods long term, which might prevent you from having to throw them away someday. And in the event that you don't have a vacuum sealer, we are going to do some resealing in plastic jugs and glass jars using oxygen absorbers. So let's start by making these potato chips into Apocalyptic chips. So if you'd like to know what happens when you put a bag of potato chips just in its original container into a vacuum sealing bag, I'll show you that. It works, but you get potato chip crumbs rather than just potato chips. So let's cut a hole in the sealing bag. We are going to put this bag in a wide mouth jar. Of course, anytime you're doing this, you need to make sure that they're still okay. They are. So you have to make a decision whether a medium-sized bag of potato chips is worth the investment of a jar. Of course, you can reuse the jar again and again and again. Mason jars are an investment. So we're using the wide mouth jar. So we're going to use this one. Put the lid on, put the sealing mechanism on. This comes off, this goes in. Take this out, and then you don't just pull it off, you kind of lift one side, and the jar is sealed. You should be able to pick it up with the lid. For storage, I keep the lids on, or the bands on, so that nothing hits the edge of that and undoes it. So if you think having chips are worth it, but the jar is not, that's your alternative. They will still be good, but they will be crumbs for the most part. Next, let's turn some corn chips into Apocalyptic chips. Don't forget the test. Still good. And sometimes that gasket does come out, and you just simply put it back. Our jar's sealed. The ring or the band goes on. I will label those before I put them in storage. But again, you got to decide whether the jar is worth the chips. I think it is for at least a few, but you got to decide that for yourself. Okay, there are a few chips left, so I know you want to see, so we'll go ahead and do it. So yes, it did seal them in the bag, and it heat sealed them. Well, this bag was a very thin Mylar bag, so it is vacuum sealed and it is heat sealed. I'm not sure how long this would last, the seal, but it is sealed now. So how much did it crush, or how badly did it crush them? It did somewhat, but for the most part, they're still very much intact. I'm going to repackage this bag in a vacuum sealer bag. So the pre-made bags that I had are 8 inches by 11. That bag was too small. Put this bag in. So I made a bag from a roll that's 11 inches wide instead of 8 inches. So now we'll put this into this bag. Corn chips and the potato chips. Quite a bit of difference. Corn chips hold up much better to the vacuum than the potato chips. Save your jars for the potato chips. Seal your corn chips in the original container. Since we had some corn chips left over that wouldn't fit in the jar, let's use a freezer bag. I could not get the freezer bags to work. So freezer bags with this model of Food Saver are out. That brings us to the chocolate chips. So now let's convert these into Apocalyptic chips. These are not nearly as fragile as the potato chips. First, let's store them in the bag in a vacuum sealer bag. Easy to see what they are. And there they are. And since I don't have enough chocolate chips left to fill up a jar, in this jar we're going to use some white chocolate chips. There's only a very few left. Should I try to fit them in or make better use of them? They're good. I think we'll make better use of these. Put our lid on. So I'll put that back in. Our jar is sealed and those are pretty heavy. It is back in. Not difficult. A bag of trail mix. Maybe it doesn't qualify for chips, but I didn't have nearly as many chocolate chips as I thought I did. So we're going to repackage the trail mix in a jar. we are going to use an oxygen absorber in the jar. And I do not remember if these are 1000 cc or 2000, but in any event, they're enough for a quart jar. So we'll get our oxygen absorber in there. And now, so that I don't lose these, I'm going to put them in a jar and vacuum seal this jar. At the beginning of the video, I said we would do some repackaging in plastic jugs also. So my apologies for being woefully deficient in the amount of chocolate chips I thought we had on hand. But we'll go ahead and pack this jar, and we'll pack it with rice. I have about 5 pounds of rice in there. That's a 1 gallon jug. So I'm going to go ahead and put the oxygen absorber in and then finish filling the jug. So I will have to break the seal on the jar and then reseal it so that the rest of them stay fresh and good. Alright, I made a bit of a mess, but I finally got it done. So we'll put the lid on tight, but not such that I break something. The 1000 cc oxygen absorber is in there. It's a 1 gallon jug. So I got a little over 7 pounds of rice in the 1 gallon jug. So that's about the equivalent of 1/5 of a 5 gallon bucket. I roughly get 30 to 32 or 33 pounds of rice in a 5 gallon bucket when I do it with Mylar bags. But I'm thinking for us, most of our food storage, I know we're getting away from the Apocalyptic idea right now, but food storage is still important. Most of ours now is going to be done in smaller containers because we're no longer trying to get 50-pound bags of things at a time. We're more so getting 1, 2, 5-pound bags, and it's much easier to store them promptly in things like this. And at the beginning of the video, I said we would repackage some chocolate chip cookie mix to have on hand during hard times. We're going to leave it in its original bag and seal it in a regular vacuum sealing bag. I folded it just a little bit so that we don't get any powders coming out. So there are our chocolate Apocalyptic cookie mixes. Many of the foods that we get every day at the grocery store are just not packaged for long-term storage for SHTF type of events and the aftermath of such. So if we want foods like those and other foods as well, we have to repackage them. And I hope in this video that I've showed you guys that repackaging your favorite short-term foods is not all that difficult. It just takes the right equipment and a little bit of time, a little bit of patience. I had a few setbacks, but that's because I tried using the freezer bags for the first time on this video instead of trying them before. Had I tried them before, I would have known they're a no-go for my machine, even though some folks are able to use them. I'm not. Can you? Try and see. Do you guys have a favorite snack food, comfort food that you want to have on hand during difficult times? If so, what is it and how are you guys storing it long term? Let us hear from you about that down in the comments. Foods that come in packages like these, you can repackage them for long-term storage, but canned foods, you can't repackage those. So if you're concerned about putting canned foods into your prepper pantry for the long term, then check this video out.